Trina.
No one.
What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the latest Gators Online show. Zach Albaverdi, Nick Del Torre here. It's been another busy week of transfer portal news out of Gainesville. The Gators have landed their first commit this spring, and it was their first official visitor this spring. There's more to come. And Nick, we got to hear from Billy Napier this week as well. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. I just heard you say Billy's name, and I'm going back into our conversation that we had. It was a little while ago. Someone had mentioned it to you. Zach just says it in his own way. But it has been a busy week, and I think I started a fire on the show last week that I didn't intend to start. But we'll get more into that this week. You get some good news with the commitment. Baseball gets a sweep over the weekend. We'll get into that, obviously, last 5 minutes of the show. If you want to sponsor the last 5 minutes of the show, if you've got a baseball product, we can get you in. We got another month of baseball here, possibly two, to see how long they go.
Man, they keep playing the way they are, man. They're not going to stop. We're playing to June, so obviously the staff is going to be recruiting into June, July, and all through the fall. But right now, the focus is on the transfer portal, Nick, and we've been waiting to see when the Gators were going to bring in some official visitors, and they finally brought one in this past week. And at the conclusion of his trip, he was officially a Gator, and that is former Michigan safety RJ Moten. He made it official, his first time ever in Gainesville, Nick, despite being a UF legacy. Tell us a little bit about the newest Gator and what he's bringing to this team.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that Florida needed was some experience and some veteran leadership. Boxes checked. RJ Moten has played more games in college than Miguel Mitchell and Kamari Wilson combined. He's a good player. I don't think he's Reggie Nelson, but he's a good player who checks a huge box for you. He's a guy who could come in and start for Florida against Utah. He's that good player. And I think he brings to the room that leadership and that veteran know-how and experience Florida simply didn't have. I don't think Florida's safety room is trash. I don't think they're bad. They're just 18 and 19 years old. So you're bringing in a guy who has some experience, who's been there, and who can kind of lead that room by example and with his age.
No doubt. And you look at a guy who's coming over from Michigan and RJ Moten as a player who started 10 games last season at safety. He had 31 tackles, an interception. He's a guy that's kind of done a lot in his career with the Wolverines, finished with 65 total tackles. But I think probably the most impressive stat that he had during his time there is 0 touchdowns allowed in his career out of 534 coverage snaps. So that's pretty good. And I think that the Gators want to add that to their secondary. Nick, give us a little bit more about what RJ brings to the safety room and how he's going to fit in.
I think he's more of a free safety. When I look at his PFF grade, which I know there's strong feelings both sides about PFF grades, but I think those guys do a good job, and it shows that maybe suspect as a tackler in some games, specifically last year. But a guy like you just mentioned, a guy who can cover. So I see a free safety, but I also see a guy, even if he's missed a couple tackles, he missed less than Trey Dean and less than Rashad Torrance did last year. And a guy who's not afraid to go and play in the box, which would be more of a strong safety. So I think a little position versatility for Florida. You could probably get him on the field with Kamari and with Miguel, and maybe have a 3 rotation at safety with those guys. But a guy who I think the biggest thing for me is everything that I've already mentioned. I think he can play. You look at those coverage numbers and not allowing a passing touchdown, that's really attractive. And then a guy who can thud. And as you spoke with Ron Moten, RJ's dad, a thudder of his own, playing linebacker for the Gators back in the day. Before our time, but back in the day, still a Gator, a former Gator player.
Absolutely. And if you didn't have a chance to check out that story at Gators Online, definitely encourage Florida fans to go do that, especially fans of the 80s, because if you are a fan of the 80s and you remember Ron Moten and the
Remember
impact that he
58.
had, yeah, man, back-to-back 9-1-1 teams, the school's first ever SEC championship that was later vacated, but they still won it on the field. And I know that those memories are still there for fans. So those memories are still there for Ron as well. It was great to kind of catch up with him, Nick, because he was still
let me
kind of
interrupt you real quick, because I love doing this. I love peeling back, the curtain a little bit, or peeling the curtain. Tell fans how you got the interview with Ron and RJ, because it just shows up and we're the only ones that have the interview, but what goes into getting that?
Yeah, obviously you're trying to catch up with this guy on the day that he's leaving from his official visit. We don't have a number. We're not able to get in contact by phone. It used to be back in the day that you could maybe try and get them on campus, but now there's so many things that they do and there's so much places that they go, you can't really catch them in one spot. So usually your best hope is to get them at the airport, and that's where that went down this week. It was
a stakeout.
It was a stakeout. And it was funny. I was sitting there, and as I'm waiting on Ron and RJ to come into the airport, here comes Antoine Powell-Ryland walking right by me on his way to Virginia Tech out of Gainesville. So, one guy from the transfer portal going out, another one coming in. And RJ came walking through. Of course, I saw his dad first, and big you're not going to miss that. And it was, it was funny. His dad saw me walking up to him, probably recognized pretty quickly that I was a reporter, and just the look on his face, like, is this really happening? Like, am I getting walked up on an airport by a reporter? And yep, this is happening. Like, your son is the man of the hour. And we stalked you guys out at the airport, and but they were great. Had a great time chatting with both of them, and it was an emotional roller coaster, as Ron described it. This is a guy who has not been to Gainesville in 37 years. He's not been back since he last played. He's now lives in New Jersey, travels back and forth to Madison Square Garden, where he now works, kind of doing security and threat management. He retired back in 2018, but he has not been to a Florida game since 1986, hasn't been on campus in 37 years. So everything looked completely different to him. And I can't imagine what his emotions are going to be like once we get to the fall and he gets to come back for a game in the Swamp on Saturday, man.
And I'm a sucker for father-son stories, and I only imagine the goosebumps that Ron Moten will have being back in that stadium as not just a fan, but as the father of a son, watching your son run out of that same tunnel that you ran through with the same jersey, same Gator logo, and kind of living out what was your dream. And I'm sure it was a dream just to see his son play college football, especially at a university in a program like Michigan, the winningest program in college football. But it's got to mean something more. And Ron had his own ending at Florida. But I'm sure the memories and the emotions flood back. You get back on the campus and listen, Midtown Gainesville doesn't look the same since I've been here. That was only 10. I've only been here 10 years. So I can only imagine what it'll be like and how emotional it'll be for Ron to see RJ kind of, following in his footsteps a little bit at the University of Florida. So that'd be cool to me. I love those kind of personal stories that pop up.
And we got to see the cool photo from the official visit of those two guys, both dressed up in the full uniform. Ron still looked like he could play, man.
Ron still feels a uniform guy. I'm not. You can't hide that. It looked like he was wearing pads. It looked like Ron pads for that picture.
It did, man. He looked physically impressive and imposing, and standing right there next to his son, wearing number 6. Although that's not the number that he'll be wearing at Florida, because that number is already taken by Shamar James. So I asked RJ, is he going to wear your dad's number? He goes, no, I ain't wearing 58.
That's a weird number for a safety, baby. Weird number.
Yeah, no, that's not happening. RJ told me that he's looking to get number 4. So I think Florida fans can look out for him next season in single digits. So, but congratulations to RJ. You're gonna say something about that single digit, Nick?
Well, yeah. So listen, I've been a little critical. I think I think Jordan Castell, 14 might be his number, but like looks a little weird. I know our boy Jalen Watkins wore 14 back there. I'm like, 14 kind of looks a little weird. What number is Bryce Thornton? 18. I think 18 looks a little weird, but I'm looking at the roster and zeros, 2 of them taken. I don't think you get a number 1. I think that's got to be special. 2 doubled up, 3's doubled up, 5 is taken, 6 is doubled up. 4 is there for the taking. I think Marcus Burke might be back in the good graces and might get his number 4 back though. See, that'd be on the offensive side of the ball.
The numbers game. It's always something that they care about, Nick.
Listen, who was it? Cleve. What was Tyreek Cleveland's number? And then he got in trouble. There was that whole BB gun shooting incident. And then it's like, hey, listen, you're going to be suspended for a little while. And also, now you're wearing 89. And
I want to say he went from like 2 to 89.
Yes. Yeah. No, it was a clean message being sent by who was that? McElwain?
I guess that was a brutal number switch.
It was tough to watch. It was like you had a really low coveted number, and then now you're almost at a defensive lineman's number. You're in a jersey reserved for like the blocking tight
end. It was almost as bad as when KT went to the Giants and got 1, and they were like, actually, never mind, you're getting 89.
Yeah, similar.
That was very tough. Well, I do want to mention that if you are having some tough issues as it relates to dental problems, I want to encourage everybody to go out there and if you're in the Gainesville area, to visit Prairie Dental Center. The doctor is a UF grad who's practiced in Gainesville for 3 decades and has developed a deep understanding of how to diagnose and treat various dental problems, along with advanced skills and knowledge to provide more effective and efficient care to his patients. If you're having dental concerns or just need a cleaning, Prairie Dental Center offers a wide range of personalized care options to meet your individual needs. Give their office a call at 352-373-3431. Tell them Gators Online sent you, and your new patient exam will be free. Again, that's 352-373-3431. Now, Nick, as we switch gears, we got to hear from Billy Napier this week, who had his latest speaking tour stop in Sarasota, Florida. And of course, the topic of conversation was transfer portal. And more specifically, the approach that he and his staff have taken, how they've gone about trying to bring official visitors to campus, and ultimately, how many guys they've been able to land or not land. I think it's fair to say that so far, they haven't gotten the returns that maybe fans expected or hoped for. Billy addressed some of those complaints in Sarasota. Nick, what were your takeaways from what he had to say? You're muted.
I went in last week, and I stand by that. But I wasn't talking about their recruiting efforts in total. And I think some people kind of ran with what I was saying. I don't agree with this very specific 2-week period and how they're handling it. It's speed dating. I don't think have time to, date like it's the turn of the 19th century. And you've got, the first date is with everyone's parents in the living room and you're talking. And I understand he's got his system and their evaluations, but you're going to miss out on some guys. I think he's okay with that. If you look at Florida's track record of the transfer portal, it's fantastic. Ricky Pearsall, Montrell Johnson, Jalen Kimber, the quarterback, both of your quarterbacks, Miller and Mertz, Terhaja Mitchell, Deuce Spurlock, Cam Carroll, Micah Mazuka, Cameron Waits, Keontae Goodwin, Osiris Torrance, a consensus. They understand that the transfer portal is important. I think where you get into an area where I'm not going to see eye to eye with them, and it doesn't matter, I'm not making the calls. In an area where you're going to get into something that the fans don't like is Billy Napier is not going to sacrifice his evaluation period. He's not going to cut corners in his evaluation. If that means by the time their evaluation's done, they miss out on someone. Okay, man. Well, that stinks. We would have liked to have him, but we're going to go through our process. And to a degree, the proof's in the pudding. The names I just listed off, some of the best players on Florida's team are from the transfer portal. So they are doing a good job in the transfer portal. I just don't think that when you have this little 2-week period, by the time you're done with your evaluation period, guys already know where they're going. So that's where I was saying you've got this whole army, and it should be the start of an evaluation period. And I think he answered that to a degree as well. Hey, we do that. We do have files ready for some guys, but then there's sometimes we're going to pop in that you weren't expecting, and it takes a little time. So I still stand by what I said. I just don't see Billy Napier changing who he is. He loves evaluating players. He loves sitting down, watching film, figuring out what a guy is. And then after that, well, he fits our football team physically, skill-wise. Now I need to go talk to his high school coach. What kind of person is he? Talk to his position coach. Talk to the people that know him. Is he a culture fit for our locker room? So that is, as Billy Napier said yesterday, it is what it is. That's a cornerstone of their program, that evaluation process, and I don't think that's changing.
And I think one thing that he also addressed that was important was the lack of official visitors in April, and more specifically while the transfer portal was open, because we were told from program sources, Nick, that the Gators weren't going to have any official visitors while the portal was open, that guys were going to start coming on campus in May. Now, that's what we were told, and that's how things are going to play out. However, Billy says that was not by design, that there were some guys that they had, to use his words, that they had on the books for April, and for whatever reason or another, it just wasn't able to happen. Now, he listed and went through and gave some examples of some of the pitfalls that can pop up in the portal process where you think that you're going to be able to bring a guy to campus and then it doesn't materialize for a number of reasons, whether that's a medical exam or injury history, whether that's an academic situation, whether they do a little bit of homework and figure out there's a character flaw, whatever the case may be. He gave one specific example of a transfer that they had recruited for several weeks, and then once they got his transcript, they realized that they couldn't take him, and they had already put in that legwork. And that is something he admitted to and said, hey, that was a mistake that we made in the process, and that's something that we're trying to avoid again. But I would, at least taking him at his word, assume that, that they would have tried to bring in some guys, I think, these last couple of weeks that just didn't line up for whatever the case may be. However, there is going to be some that are going to come in the weeks to come, and we'll get into that. But what did you think about his, I guess, clarification of their approach there and some of the things that can make stop a visit from happening?
I think those are all valid reasons. The University of Florida, it's hard to get into. I didn't get in at high school, that's for sure. It's much easier to get in if you like from a community college, specifically a community college in the state of Florida. But I think there was one transfer portal in particular that he may or may not have been allegedly talking about in that instance, who ended up going back to their school after they were unable to get into two different universities and having to go back to their school. So I agree with that.
Universities.
Yes, yes, both with similar shades of school colors. And
very close to each other.
Not too far. Definitely an easy drive. So I think that's valid. And I think it's a learning lesson for them. I don't fault them at all. If I can't sit here and be a hypocrite and say, you need to be recruiting, you need to be scouting, you need to have a file, and then say, oh, well, you're an idiot. You should have known that his transcripts weren't going to get him in. No, that's do that last. Know who he is as a football player and as a person before the grades. And if it doesn't work out, cool. put the file somewhere else, and we'll move on to the next one. So I can't have it both ways. So I'm fine with that. Find out who the football player is that can help you. And you know, if it's an admissions issue, it's an admissions issue. Florida's a really good university. To be able to have adjunct professors Zach Alberverdi on staff, you know, it's a great university. So to me, that's fine. In terms of this week, listen, I can't even get a table at Embers this weekend, Zach. If I can't get a table at Embers, then you know the town is packed. I'm not going to drive anywhere right now. I'm not trying to do anything like that. It's graduation weekend. Families are here. The place is packed. I think that's why they got in RJ when they got him in. And the one thing I don't think that Billy will talk about or did talk about is, but we talked last week, is scaring off players from your roster. Bringing in an RJ Moten. What does that do to Kamari Wilson, who could have hit the portal and gone to a bunch of schools with him on their roster? I think that's the part that Billy doesn't want to say or will never say.
He did allude to it, though. At least in my opinion, I thought he did.
The way you heard it. So to me, that's the other issue that maybe wasn't spoken, but I believe to be true. Bringing guys in while the portal is open might have you looking to bring an extra guy in, because now you lost one. Hey, we only needed one. Well, shoot, we brought one in and now we lost two. So now we need to get three from the portal. So I think there's some roster management and balancing goes into it as well.
I think it's also important to note, to circle back on the academic thing, is, you know, that is something that I think will prevent Florida from pursuing a lot of players in the portal. Just to be honest, and those standards are what they are. I think that there's other schools that have similar, but I think Florida is one of the more difficult ones to get into. And just using RJ Moten as an example, he had to lose college credits in order to transfer from Michigan to Florida. And for him and his dad and his family, he was okay with that. That was a sacrifice that he was willing to make so that he could come to Florida. Not every other college, student athlete is okay with that. Some of those guys don't want to take extra semesters and lose work that they've already put in and credits that they've already earned. So I thought that one of the interesting comments that Billy made in Sarasota, as just an example of how these academic hurdles can be there for them, is, you know, a player or transfer that has 1 or 2 years left, that's been in college for 8 semesters, there's a high likelihood that that guy can't get into school at the University of Florida. So those are the admissions issues that he's referring to. And Nick, as you know, this has long been a burden and a hurdle for Florida at times when it comes to trying to get kids into school. This is not new with the transfer portal. This is, you know, obviously happened in the high school ranks and guys trying to get, you know, through the clearinghouse, but then they can't get into UF even though they got through the clearinghouse. Now this transfer thing is a new dynamic. I will say I don't think that Billy was being critical of the admissions office. I think that he was just pointing out the fact that, hey, this is something that we have to go through at UF. And, you know, sometimes we're not going to be able to get guys because of that, and fans need to understand that reality.
Like I just said, I can't have it both ways. Don't be a fan and say top 5 university. Take that, you stupid Georgia graduate, and then be mad when guys can't get into school. You can't have it both ways. If you want to be Marshall, cool, and everyone can get in, but just understand that the University of Florida is the flagship program and flagship university in the state. It's the premier university with the best education, public education in the state of Florida. It's held to different standards. Is that going to affect football? I think we're seeing that it does, and that's a trade-off. I wonder what new president Ben Sassy, who I think is a little more of a sports nut than President Fox was. So we'll see. But I don't think University of Florida is ever going to tank its admissions program so that one or two more football players can get in.
Yeah, it's something that I think is going to continue to be a hurdle, and Florida is not the only school that's going through that from a transfer standpoint and trying to carry over credits and things like that. But it is something that I think that maybe guys that have popped up in the portal over the past couple weeks and fans be like, well, why don't they go after that guy? Maybe that transcript doesn't pass.
And then it might not just be bad grades too. There might, if you're junior in college and your credits aren't going to transfer over, a school might not let you in because, well, now if, let's say you have enough credits to be a junior at your current school, but you're going to lose 15 credits. And now there's a progress towards a degree, which is a requirement to allow someone to transfer. And okay, well, you're not. Now you fall under the requirements for progress where you should be towards a degree. And it's like, well, no, I'm not. You're just not accepting those credits for classes I've taken that were paid for and passed. So it's not that, someone's an idiot. It might just be bureaucratic red tape in the world of academia.
No doubt. And we're gonna shift gears here as we wrap up the show with our final segment. But before we do that, I want to give a shout out to our second sponsor and encourage all Florida fans to go check out rogueshop.com. If you have issues sleeping, chronic pain, and or anxiety and stress, Rogue Shop sells CBD, THC, edibles, smokables, and vapes, as well as handcrafted bath salts, soaps, candles, massage oils, pain creams, and topicals. Rogue Shop is a true small business, disabled, veteran-owned, Black-owned, woman-owned company. They have 5 employees, make all of their products with their own cannabis grown in their manufacturing facility. So visit rogueshop.com. That's ROGUESHOP.com. And as we now get into the month of May the force be with you. As we record this on a Thursday, there is more official visitors that are going to be coming to town. RJ Moten was the first from the transfer portal this spring, but more are on their way. We knew of 2 visits scheduled this month. One of those is no longer on, but hearing from Billy in Sarasota, he said that they're expecting some guys to be back on campus in the coming weeks. He said there's 1 or 2 players that they want to add at some positions of need. And I think that you're going to now see things pick up now that the dust has settled from the portal. They kind of have their board built now, and there's no more exit meetings going on. You know who you got, and I think now they can turn their attention to these official visits. But it's going to be interesting to see, Nick, who they bring on and what type of success that they can have. If it's similar to RJ.
Yeah, and that'll be interesting too, because when you look at scholarship numbers, first off, scholarship numbers, you don't have to be at 85 until fall camp. Several guys, including Khalil Jackson, Adam Mahalik, among others, were put on scholarship for the spring semester and the summer semester. You can have 100 guys on scholarship in July. When camp breaks in August or starts at the end of July, because Florida will start camp a little bit early since they're playing on a Thursday. Thank you, Pac-12 TV contracts. They have to be 85 then. So while you might be at a number, people are like, how many scholarships do they have left? It's like however many you want right now, currently. Especially if guys, aren't going to be coming to summer A. If they're going to be coming in late in the summer B, depending on credits and transfers, we've talked about that already. It's a fluid situation. So I think Florida can bring guys on, but also this staff's not bringing guys on just to fill out a room. If you need depth, okay, but I think you need a starting receiver, like UTSA receiver. I'm blanking on his name right now, and that'll be a pronunciation disaster for us, I think, Zach. But
hopefully not as bad as Iguacan.
Yeah, but that's a guy who can come in and start. I don't think you're looking for a receiver who's going to come in and play 4 snaps a game just to fill a room. You've a bunch of guys there. I just think if if you can get a premier talent, you should get someone in that room. So they're not going to do that. And then I think that's when you'll see someone like a Khalil Jackson or somebody else potentially be on scholarship in the fall if they are available. But Florida's not up against an 85 limit right now. That would be self-imposed if they were. And last year, I think showed, and I think I even wrote it last year, Florida's not worried about 85, and there's a processing that can happen. And that has happened other places, and Florida just didn't participate in that prior to Billy Napier coming.
And Nick mentioned the walk-on players who received scholarships for the spring and summer. That was Khalil Jackson, Keenan Landry, Adam Mahalik, and Scott Isaacs. And as Billy said in Sarasota, Khalil Jackson is going to have an opportunity to earn a scholarship full-time in the fall. And honestly, I think he's going to be in line for that, just given where the receiver position is at following Xavier Henderson's departure and just his contributions. I mean, he's always been a guy that's kind of been in the rotation, but just maybe hasn't been used as much. I think that's going to change this year. But just looking at their scholarship numbers, excluding the walk-ons that have been awarded scholarships just for the offseason, with RJ Moten joining the team, and although he has not been officially signed yet, the Gators are now set to have 77 scholarship players on the roster. And then they have 4 more joining them in the summer. Coming up here, I think May 15th is when summer classes begin. So that's going to put them at 81. So that's 4 spots short of the 85-man scholarship limit. Obviously, that right there tells you some of the opportunity that Khalil Jackson has to get one of those. But where do we see the Gators go now for their final spots? We know that they've filled the need at safety. First of all, do you agree with me, because I tweeted this out, that this fills Florida's biggest need with RJ Moten committing? Do you feel like that is a correct statement, that safety was their biggest need?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you and I have been saying you need a starter at safety, and I think that he can be that. This isn't just we needed a veteran who had a bunch of snaps play. I think this guy is good. When I look at the remaining needs, I think you need.
Because I said, I just want to say, because I said that they're bringing in their first official visitor, and it's at their biggest position of need. And everybody quote tweeted me and was like, quarterback. And I was like, that's not their biggest position of need. Like, could they use another guy there? Absolutely. But if it comes down to Graham Mertz or Jack Miller as your starter, it's a much better position to be in than where they are at safety with the youth and inexperience there. So it's not even comparable to me. They had to get a safety.
What fans want at quarterback is not available in the transfer portal.
Tell them, Nick. Tell them, Nick. It ain't showing up.
It's not there. It's not coming.
Grayson McCall is not going to magically re-enter.
Great. She's not, unless he somehow graduates at Coastal Carolina and can be a graduate transfer.
How many times have you been asked about Grayson McCall this offseason?
I think the ship sailed on Grayson a little bit, and it became the Malik Murphy one. And then I was like, Malik Murphy is the backup at Texas, and he's going to be at Texas. And they're like, oh, well, he's dumb. And I'm like, okay, well, is the backup at Texas better than the starter at Florida? I'm like, he would start right away at Florida. Haven't seen a ton of him outside of spring games.
Let me ask you
this. Really talented player who's not in the transfer portal and who I had to talk about extensively while he was not in the transfer portal.
That sounds about right.
Just wasting time.
Yeah, that's sometimes we do that. Will Florida waste their time with the quarterback? Do you think that of the official visitors coming from the transfer portal in the coming weeks, will one of them be a quarterback?
No, I think what is in transfer portal is more or less the same as what you have in your room. I think they will add a quarterback, but not in the transfer portal. We've talked about that over and over again, about the possibility of Austin Simmons reclassifying. And if you're on the Gators Online message board, I've gone into even more depth about that. I don't see Florida hosting a quarterback in the transfer portal. I think you need to the next needs the next biggest need is an offensive lineman for depth. Like Florida's starting five, I did not feel good about the five that were playing in the spring game when you take out a Micah Mazuka and a Kingsley Aguakin. Not feel good about those. So to me, you need some depth, one or two guys, because that's a fragile position. Those guys are smacking their heads against defensive linemen 65, 70 times a game. A running back gets tapped into their back. They get rolled up on, sprained ankle. You're out 3 weeks now. Who's coming in behind you? I think once you check the box, RJ Moten at safety, I think my next biggest need would be offensive line. One or two guys. I think probably more interior guys than tackles, but you'll take either. And then I'd go to the edge after that. You can never have enough guys getting after the quarterback. I don't think Florida did well enough getting after quarterback last year. And I love Princely Umanmielen.
There you go.
Just say okay. I was waiting for something there.
You waiting for confirmation.
Yeah. I was like waiting to see if the ref was going to throw a penalty flag. I was holding behind the line of scrimmage. I was like, did he get it? And I think Justice Boone can be good there. I think Princely obviously is going to have a great season there. I think TJ Searcy on the outside. I really was impressed with. Obviously, looking at him as a recruit, he can get to the quarterback, but you have to make yourself a well-rounded player to be able to get into more packages, to be able to get onto the field for the opportunity to rush the quarterback. So what I saw in the spring with him is they were on the edge. How can you be against the run? Are you just a guy that we can only put in on 3rd and 12? Because all you can do is get to the quarterback. And I think he took that as a challenge that if I want to see the field, I need to be able to play on 1st and 2nd down as well. And I love the progression I saw from him. So I think I like that edge position. I would like to add another one if I'm the Gators.
And I think to me that might be after Antoine Powell-Ryland's departure, that might now be to me the biggest need after safety. Because I think that once the offensive line gets healthy, and that is a big if, but if they do
stay healthy,
then it's not as big of a need. But because of the unknown, that's why you need to do it, just so that you can, save yourself in the event that things go south. But I think to me that the depth that they've lost at the jack/outside linebacker spot is I don't know if people understand the scope of it really, because last year you lost Brenton Cox Jr. dismissed midseason, and then Antoine Powell-Ryland Jr. takes over for him. Well, now he's gone, but so is Chief Borders, David Reese, and Lloyd Summerall III. And then a 5th player at that position last year, Andrew, whose last name I cannot pronounce, so I'm not going to try, with an Andrew S. He is now playing tight end this season after moving over from the edge. So the Gators basically lost 5 players at the outside linebacker jack spot from last year. The only guy that returns now is Jack Piper. That's it. So they moved Princely Umanmielen over there, and so that's obviously now probably your starter, and probably the reason why Powell-Ryland left is because he got a spot taken. But there's still the need there for that depth, because Mike Peterson, he is now the edge coach, and instead of just being the outside linebackers guy, now he has the ends and the outside linebackers. There's a lot of talent in his room, but there's not as much outside linebacker depth. You have Pyburn, you have Princely, and then you have TJ Searcy. I mean, he's really the only true outside linebacker there. Kelby Collins and Cameron James, those guys are defensive ends. They're like Justice Boone in terms of what they bring physically. So I think that they could use another true outside linebacker, and maybe a guy with a little bit more experience than Jack Pyburn, and TJ Searcy. Now, one remedy for that, though, could be Scooby Williams. He's a guy that, he was actually listed on the roster for this spring as an edge.
Cross-training a little bit.
Yeah, well, and then Taraja Mitchell can't play. Derek Wingo's out. So now there's a need for depth inside. So he just kind of stayed there. And then, in the spring game, he started at inside linebacker next to Shamar because all the guys out. So I know Jay Bateman is lobbying, to quote him, he's lobbying to keep him at inside linebacker, but he said that he's going to do both. So I think Scooby's a guy that will allow them, I think, from a depth standpoint to get away. But Nick, I think also with Xavier Henderson leaving, now you got to go get a receiver.
Andrew Savani.
There you go. I did not want to butcher your last name, my man. So I left it to the expert, my partner.
Well, I'm probably saying that, with an accent. I got an entire pronunciation guide of the players saying their own names, and he says it much prettier than I said it. But Andrew Savani would be, I think, an acceptable form of saying it. I agree with you, though. I think, I probably haven't even looked at that room as much, just 'cause I think Princey will play most of those steps. But when you lay it out like that, Jack Pyburn is, Will Smith in the Will Smith gif of like when you walked into the house and he's like, "Yo, where did everyone go? No one, just me." So that's a position, and I think I might differ with you a little bit, just because I think maybe I'm just putting too much on Princely. I would put offensive line ahead of edge, and I think I would even put if you can get an elite receiver, I would put that over getting another edge. You do need the depth at edge, but I think you need a starting outside receiver. I just don't know that Caleb Douglas, that I've seen enough from him that I think that love Florida's room if he's one of your starting guys, and I think there's a couple guys in the transfer portal that you can go and get. And as I pull up the spray, Zachary Franklin is the one that we talked about from UTSA, University of Texas, San Antonio. And then another receiver would be Michigan State's Keon Coleman, who, if I'm Florida, I'm trying to get him on campus right now because he was just in Tallahassee for a visit Seminole. So, hey, you're not from the state of Florida, but we're just 2 hours down I-10. If you want to hit I-10, south on 75, or right here, we can send the car for you.
Well, speaking of I-10, Nick, that was a tough drive home for those Seminoles of Florida State. As the sweep was completed in Jacksonville, Delatory Plus was bro. It was working, although
I ain't gonna lie, I was getting cooked.
You were like Dan Mullen getting trolled by Florida fans for his Anthony Richardson tweet.
Bro, it's an iPhone 10. It's not a Sidekick. It's not a Motorola Razr. And the frustrating part is, on my phone, it looks great. When I do videos at football practice, Zach, 4K, 1080p. I try to go live, 10p, literally 10p. It was just tough.
You just can't go live.
It looked fine on my phone, and people were like, "What is this, a potato? What are you talking about?" I'm looking at my phone. It looks great. I go back and I replay it, and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is trash." I can count all 8 pixels of the baseball field on my phone right now. So it was tough. I was trying to do a nice thing, and it blew up in my face. I was trying to see, like, hey, game's on TV. I can maybe get a piece of history, and instead of doing a landscape and doing it live and getting a great video of the show back, I was like, let me do it live. People can watch as I watch. And they literally could not watch as I watched because the video was so bad. So,
well, I mean, the good thing is that you
or Elon.
The good thing is that you sent out your updated Twitter avatar, so they knew.
Oh man, listen, if you can't have fun, with it, if you can't laugh at yourself, then people are just laughing at you. So I was
Everybody was
rolling.
laughing at Florida State.
Yeah, everyone. Florida has just, I mean, under Kevin O'Sullivan, Florida has just dominated Florida State. And I can go back to watching games at McKeithen and watching Dylan Busby make 4 errors at first base. And like Florida State just gets tight. It's like they understand how dominant Florida has been over them on the baseball diamond, and they just play tight against Florida. I think, looking at the game, Florida comes out and gets a 4-run lead, and right away Cleve Hartzell gives it back. And you're thinking, man, FSU's got the momentum, and Florida just dominates Florida State on the diamond. They've won 22 of the last 26 meetings. Florida State still holds the series advantage with a record of 132, 126, and 1 for Florida. So that is getting closer. Florida's only 6 games behind. But when you look at it under Kevin O'Sullivan, Florida is 35-19 in the series, including 18-3 in Gainesville. If Florida State were to win every single game against Florida from next year until 2029, the FSU baseball program would still have a losing record against Kevin O'Sullivan. If they swept the next 5 series against Florida, they would still have a losing record against Kevin O'Sullivan. This is like Urban Meyer levels of dominating rival, is what Kevin O'Sullivan has done to Florida State, and quite frankly, Florida State and Miami.
Definitely looking forward to seeing how that plays out this weekend in College Station. Make sure you guys stay tuned to Gators Online for all of Nick's coverage on the baseball front, as well as Corey and Keith's coverage on the recruiting front. Keith was out there at IMG Academy this week getting some juice. So make sure you guys stay locked with Gators Online. We'll have more next week on the latest from the transfer portal as well. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Albaverdi.